welcome to another episode of the 2 Minute Warning, brought to you by the West Side Gazette newspaper. I'm your host, Perry Busby, and I want to welcome you once again to another week of uh, energetic and insightful conversation about voting and about the community around voting. Want to welcome you to our guests, to our co-host, the publisher of the West Side Gazette, Mr. Bobby Henry. How you doing, Bobby?
I am terrific and getting better. And Perry, every session, every segment gets a little bit better every time we do it. And
It
I'm just so
is.
glad that we're able to participate and engage in this 2 minute warning and to bring the community into it to discuss some things that we truly need to be talking about on all levels. So I'm just glad to be here, brother.
I hear you, man.
Mhm.
Yeah, for so long we always tend to think of elections around election time, when really elections are 365 days out of the year 24/7. We are always in election mode. We are always having to assess our society and those who are leading us.
Mhm.
So we can't
Absolutely.
just look at that. We can't just look at that at a particular time of the season. We have to put some of this stress that we're feeling, I think, on those who say that they are speaking on our best behalf.
Yeah, man, it becomes convoluted, and we find
Yeah.
ourselves caught in a whirlpool. If we were using a metaphor of washing some clothes, man, we're in the rinse cycle, trying to figure out, what's going on. So, and that brings
Yeah.
about a whole nother conversation.
You're right. Yeah. As they say, it all comes out in the rinse.
If I don't get you in the wash, I'm gonna get you in the rinse. Mhm.
Now, when you rinse it, you see it, my brother. And
Everything is coming out.
man, look
Everything.
out now.
That's okay.
Look
It's
out.
all good. It's all good.
Okay.
When we create an atmosphere of energy, anything
Yeah,
is liable to happen. So that's
you're
cool.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
hmm
right. You're right.
hmm
But no, man, last week was a great conversation. I'm still hearing back
hmm
from that as we touched on the issue of how do we include everybody in the community, not just those that have an address. What about those that don't?
Right.
They are
Right.
the community too.
Mhm.
And so I've still heard some good things about that, and I want to continue that conversation because that's a part of voting. Because after this election is over, it's going to be some more people out there, Bobby, on
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
street.
Yeah, man. It's predicted to you. You brought up some numbers last week, man, of those who,
Yeah,
uh, have lost their jobs and
right.
lost their homes, and so it's going to be truly a not a rat race, but a human race to survive, man.
Right,
And it's coming
right.
from all angles.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
let me ask you this, Perry. How what is it that would cause us to not um, remember or even think about those who may not have a permanent address? Those who are nomadic, if you will.
Hmm.
What has gotten into our psyche that we can do that so freely, so haphazardly?
I wish it was that simple uh, of an answer, and I'm with you. I don't know how we have gotten to this point. I mean, uh, but I do know Frederick Douglass said that the amount of government that you will accept is the same amount of government you're gonna get. And
Hmm.
so when we have a government that's not pushed to look out for the least, and then you have people who not looking out get this. And so, so I think we're up against a race against time. At some point, you will find yourself on the wrong side of government if you're not careful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have several modes of receiving information, several
Yeah,
ways of getting information out. So that brings us to what we're going to talk about tonight. With all
right.
these different modes of communication and messages to be heard, Perry, who do you listen to?
That's a good question. I try to I look for sources that have character, but I know that that's not everyone, because I know you hear people go, "Ooh, I just don't like politics." So you have to wonder that if they don't like politics, then what are they listening to?
Hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so that is as a whole. I mean, who are we listening to?
Mm-hmm.
We know we got leaders. Are we listening to them, or are leaders listening to us? I think you raise a good question. Who are we listening to?
Mm-hmm. Who you listening to? Well,
Yeah.
we got a select panel that I do believe could appropriately answer that question or give us some insights to it.
I think so too.
What say
I
you?
think it's a
What say
well-rounded
you?
crew.
Mm-hmm.
I believe so. I believe we touched
Mm-hmm.
on. I believe we touch on every one of those things. Who those people who
Mm-hmm.
touch our community, and it's the great thing about it is I happen to know our guests and know that they are touching our community in positive ways.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to hear about what's going on in the community, these are some of the people I want to listen to.
Okay, great, great. Bring them on.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, our first guest, Bobby, uh, is special to both of us because he played a role in getting you and I together
Mm-hmm.
when I moved here. And he was the one guy who I reached out to. There's another friend, but he was the one I reached out to, and I said, "Man, I need to get in touch with Bobby Henry." Um, and so I want to introduce Jeffrey Boney. Uh, I've known Jeff for years, really from afar. Uh, Knew him when he was over the Black Chamber of Commerce, uh, but he has gone on and moved from there, and he is now an editor with the Forward Times, Houston Forward Times, as well as a city councilman. He just added that to his resume. And so I want to introduce everyone to city councilman and a man with multiple hats, Jeffrey Boney.
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen,
What's happening, Jeff?
How you doing?
and I'm happy to be here, happy to be invited. Always a pleasure to connect with the Honorable Bobby Henry Sr. and, of course, you, Perry Busby. Thank you all so much for having me on this evening.
Good, good. And if I may, Perry, the next gentleman, let's see, should we go in order of seniority or because they all carry some weight? So
Exactly.
yeah, they all carry some weight. Well, we'll do this. We'll do this. The next person has captured our history in a very profound way, and he's always finding new ways to display and give our history. He is a rapper. He's an author. He's an entrepreneur. He is Mr. Positively Pays, Mr. Raymond Absolute Robinson.
Thanks so much. I appreciate the introduction. I appreciate you, brothers, for having me. Mr. Boney, it's a pleasure to meet you. Mr. Busby, Mr. Henry, so much appreciation for the work you guys do in the community. I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey Perry, we ought to a tag team on this next gentleman.
Hey, he's tag team worthy.
He is, man. Years. Okay. Coming from a little small town, is it Tuscumbia, Alabama? The son of a preacher from a preacher, a preaching family. Very, very down to earth. Um, I'll start it that way, Perry. You come on, you join on in, and we're gonna tag team on this.
Yeah. And I as well am the son and grandson of Baptist preachers. And work very closely in the church, and I am a preacher myself. Um, so I kind of look at preachers sometime in a different way, but man, this guy here,
Mm-hmm.
he is some kind of preacher, and that's
Yeah.
just preacher talk for saying, hey man, this Negro can preach.
Mm-hmm.
And but even beyond that, he is a good gentleman.
Yes.
And that was one of the things that I truly like about him. And he's just a PK, so
Yeah.
I know how it is.
And that's not a privileged character, a privileged kid. That,
Not at all.
yeah, man, very, very astute, well learned, just an extraordinary all around gentleman. And like you said, Perry, he's just an extraordinary person and down to earth
Yeah.
preacher.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
hey, welcome.
What you gonna say about that Kappa part?
Oh, but see, I didn't want to bring that up. I didn't want to bring that up. Dr. Marcus D. Davidson, what's happening, man?
Good evening. I don't know the way you started talking about my small country town. I don't know. You almost got on the wrong side of history, Bobby. But I thank you, Brother Bobby and Brother Perry, for this opportunity. And always good to share a moment with Absolute, who is, I consider, brother. And so nice to meet Brother Jeffrey. I'm looking forward to hearing his voice, because if Bobby and Perry has reached out to him, I know he's a powerhouse. So nice to meet all of you and be on with all of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I told Bobby this is the P-Funk night. We got a preacher, a politician, a poet, a publisher, and a programmer. So we're gonna have a good conversation tonight.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's jump right on into it. Let's go into it, Pastor. You bring a message not only on Sundays but whenever the need arises. Before you do anything, who do you listen to?
And man, the textbook answer is God, man. I gotta say that. I do. I seek the voice of God through prayer, through scripture, to make sure that the message that I'm bringing is not what I want, but what God wants. And in turbulent times like we faced, I had to pray really hard, because there have been times when I wanted to share something that perhaps it wasn't what God wanted me to share. So I listened to God, but then at a second layer, I listened to culture and society, in the sense to see what's happening, to read in the West Side Gazette, read in the Wall Street Journal, read the USA Today, look and see what's happening in our society culturally, and then hear the voices of people, to see what is disturbing their conscience. So I think that when you listen to the voices from a layer perspective, I think you can have clarity to your message that is relevant to your context.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm.
No.
I want to say something to the audience. We are in a turbulent situation here. We got a storm out there, so our program may come in and out because of the weather, inclement weather. So please bear with us. We're working through this. Mm-hmm. And Pastor, you from your position, and I can say that you are authentic when you say that. That's nothing that you play with, and you stand on that. So that's a good point. Now on the other side of that, Raymond, you and Mr. Boney both have been in the secular involvement of music. You did some rapping, and you did some things. So, uh, um, Raymond, let me ask you this: what made you come outside of that one part and step into the positive part, if you will, about that?
Well, honestly, just looking at what was being done to our community, when I first started doing music, I was looking at it from a financial perspective. And then I realized that people were kind of being puppeted and treated a certain way to put out a negative message just because they make money. A lot of corporations make money from the private prison sector. They make money from the sale of drugs and alcohol. And so they were trying to put this image on the community, and a lot of people that are impressionable, mainly our youth, were being affected by it. And when I saw that, the more I made music like that, or I was just involved in creating that kind of music, then it was me who was also um, just creating the negative images, the stereotypes, the activity in our community. And so I wanted to make sure that if anything was tied to me, that it was going to be positive, and there was the change was going to come from anything that I did. And so I completely changed, and I didn't want to be one of those artists who were contributing to all the negative things that come out of our communities. I wanted to actually lift people up. I wanted to build within our community and not tear anybody down.
Hmm. 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 Mr. Boney,
Yes, sir.
the political aspect of this thing, man. I know you got some constituents. That word, um, uh, that probably, at you are a man of many situations. I'm sure that you know people in all aspects of life. Um, um, how do you relay what you now know? You know, how do you relay that message so that they can hear you?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. First of all, I mean, I encourage everybody to read "The Art of War." It's a book by Sun Tzu. If you haven't read it, and one of the quotes in that book, he says, "If ignorant both of your enemy and yourself, you're certain to be in peril." And I think that a lot of time you ask the question, "Who you're listening to?" I listen to everybody. I listen to everything. I try to get a gauge of what's going on around me and within me. Like the pastor said, I listen to God. I read the Word of God, but I listen to the streets. I grew up in the streets. I'm from the streets. I come up in different environments, so I was in the entertainment space for a period of time. I also, was a banker for 11 years. I was vice president of business banking for Washington Mutual. I've been at the executive level in banking. I've worked in the nonprofit space. I've worked in now, the newspaper business, the media business, and I also now I'm an elected official just recently reelected to my second term. So when you listen to the people, you listen to yourself, you listen to God, you listen to all of the things that are around you, you get a more diverse understanding of what's going on, and you can it'll help you shape your mode of thinking and how you view the world. And then you can also be able to contribute to other people, whether you agree with each other or not. Matters not. What matters is the fact that you hear each other, you listening to each other. And I think that in today's climate, a lot of people are not listening to each other. They're listening to respond instead of listening to understand. And what I try to do is seek to understand as an elected official. I don't make decisions always that some of my constituents may agree with, but I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to understand the issue, and I'm going to make a decision that I know I'm going to sleep with both eyes closed at night. B, I ain't going to jail for nobody, and C, I'm going to do what's in the best interest of those constituents because they may not see the boulder coming down the hill that is going to impact them in a negative way, but I do. And so they may not see it that way at that moment, but because I see it, I'm going to make a conscious decision based off of the information that I've researched and gathered in order to do what's in the best interest of not only myself, but those individuals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Pierre?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've grown up in the church, um, and the church has grown up in me. And so, in that setting, you meet all kinds and you learn from all kinds, and it's just something for me that I've sort of applied just as a principle. The people that have guided me in my life were all people who were well read, and at some point we have allowed, I think, just the fact of mere reading to be an impediment, to sometimes to our growth. And so I listen, but I also love to read. Uh, because for me, I just think that builds something internally. It builds that character in us. Uh, and so it helps to meet Jeff Boney, who has this background that is, so different, but yet is so inspiring. And then not just to see it as talk, but to see it in action in the community. And so I think for me, I try to access that information from people that I think have the same desire. And so it's not so much agreement that I look for as much as it is just try to find unity. I don't have to agree with everything you do, but gosh, I can't live next door to you and we can say hello and move on.
Mhm. All right, now y'all, we tiptoeing in the water. Let's come on to this political season here. Now, all of this talk going on, everybody has something to say. Who should we be listening to and why? Is it Ice Cube or perhaps 50 Cent?
Well,
Is it Donald Trump?
if I could
Come on.
chime in for a second, as an African American male, as an African American in this country, as an African American voter, for years, what I've seen, and as a journalist, what I've seen and what I've experienced, and how I feel, I feel like African American voters have been treated like a political pinata. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody know what a pinata is. You got all the treats inside of it, and they blindfold you, and you get a stick and start hitting at it or whatever. But as it relates to voting, it's like black people are often treated like the treats inside of the pinata. They don't care about how they get the black vote. They just want to vote no matter how blacks are treated or no matter how blacks are handled. You see all the things that are happening and why the need for Black Lives Matter has risen in this country and those voices being heard more. But blacks are consistently pounded on like that pinata, beaten over the head until they get their precious vote, and that valuable vote. And once that pinata is finally open and that vote is cast, then black people are either praised or they're vilified based off of the outcome. And if their outcome is in favorable of the people that were seeking the black vote, we tend to get ignored. And so the question that I have is, are those political parties truly listening to black people? Do we even have a black agenda? And what is it? A black agenda that we all can agree on collectively. So Ice Cube, I applaud him for trying to move the needle on the conversation, because when President Obama was in office, the Democrats had both the House and the Senate. And so you have to ask yourself the question, what actually was implemented that impacted not everybody, because I know the Affordable Care Act impacted everybody, but what about black issues, things that are important to black people during that time? So my hope is that if they do get and regain, and I really do hope that they regain the House and the Senate and the presidency, that they don't ignore the black agenda or black people's issues as I believe it happened in 2008 to 2010.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Chime in. Your mics are open. We can just have an
You
open
know what?
conversation.
I think that I had this conversation with Absolute. We kind of talked about as it relates to the work that he's doing. I think we have to be careful of allowing the media and allowing Hollywood, if you will, the news dictate who our celebrities are, who our voices are. When you listen to Brother Boney, clearly he has a voice. Why can't he be a leader? And the point is, I think in our different contexts in which we live, I think we have to listen to those persons who have shown that they are leaders by the work that they've done, by the contributions that they've made. Um, I have a unique take on 50 Cent, Jamil Hill, um, Ice Cube, in the sense that starting with Ice Cube, I think the Trump campaign did what they would normally do. They dropped a bomb. And my challenge is this: we were quick to believe exactly what they said without ever saying, Cube, what up, dude? What'd you say, man? Did what's good? We didn't say that. We just, there's another sellout Negro. We just immediately, think about it, believed there an administration that has been known for lying 4 straight years. But the moment they dropped that, Negro ain't right. We just immediately believed that. Now, when he shared his position, respect in the sense that you talk to both parties. My challenge is why you didn't start talking way before, 2 weeks before the election, and then at that point, what's going to really happen? And I definitely agree with Brother Boney on. I don't think either party sincerely has a legit concern for Black folk, and I think we've got to finally realize neither party truly has our best interests at heart, and no politician is going to come in and save us. We can have a whole conversation on President Obama. But we probably shouldn't do it on here because I want to stay in for a lot. but, but, but I mean, we just stated, we've got to decide why do we let certain people dictate and determine what we believe, what we hear. And Bobby will tell you in a minute, when I have somebody locally that I'm concerned about having a conversation with, I'll pick up the phone and say, what you know about X, Y, and Z? And he'll give me his honest perspective. And he doesn't try to sway me from speaking to them or try to suggest I do speak to them. He'll just tell me this is the situation. Just be careful when you talk to them. That's whomever. So when you start talking about who are our leaders, I think you look at your context and you start to ask yourself, who should we listen to? One minute we like this whole my voice, I can have my voice in America, we free. Well, 50 Cent doesn't want to pay taxes. Like it or don't like it, it's his freedom, it's his right. I mean, one minute we say, we want our rights, and then I don't agree with him. I mean, I get him not want to pay 62% in taxes, but I mean, and again, most of us vote against our interests in the sense that a lot of black folks should probably be Republicans based upon economic positions, but it's bigger than an economic position. A lot of black folk don't agree with every Democratic, agenda item. I mean, most black people are pro-life and not pro-birth in the sense we're just not like a Republican. We just happy you have a baby. We're about pro-life. We want to see that once you have the child, how do we help you take care of the child? How do you have a wholesome life? How does the child go to school? How does the child have a decent education? How does the child get fed? How does the child go to college? How does the child live a life? So when you start thinking about that, really what is the real deal? And then when you look at the average family, the average white family, have $1. Average black family, 5 cents. $1 versus a nickel. I mean, $1 versus a nickel. Both parties, when you start looking at the whole congressional perspective, I was just reading an article last night. Most of them are millionaires. They would never understand the plight of the average American. I mean, most of them have acquired significant wealth by being in public office. I'm not mad at that, but it's the reality that do they truly understand what we're going through? I mean, it's so many reasons and ways we have to, I think, gain understanding. So when you start saying the voice of those individuals and where they stand, I don't think they speak for every single black person. And do I? But what I have not done is been on Twitter bashing any of them because I may disagree with them, but I just choose not to spend a lot of time speaking negatively about other Black people because we got enough of that.
You got
Right.
enough. Well,
Yeah.
you captured. I'm sorry. You go ahead. Go ahead.
You guys can hear me okay?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of my main things has been in our community, as you see, I'm doing uh, as much work as I can to really capture your voices. And so one of the things that I learned through a lot of research that I've been doing over the years is celebrities are created, right? And so now as we look at who are we listening to and we talk about that, a lot of the celebrities that are speaking up have been created by corporations that that are not looking out for Black people. Let's just put it that way, right? And a lot of times we'll discuss that, we talk about that, we'll bash, which is also a way of promoting it. And a lot of times people will say you can say something negative about 50 Cent, but if somebody agrees with him, just because you bashed them don't mean they will. That means you've just promoted that message to more people, and we don't see it that way. And one of the things that I wanted to do is say, you know what, I'm no longer selling that message that's been sold to me. I have leaders in my community. I don't care what anyone says. I have celebrities in my community, and I'm going to prove it. And so that's the message that we've been pushing out through our nonprofit Positivity Pays, is just making sure that we have more positive images of Black women and Black men, and also showing the message that they've been literally changing the community for years. When a lot of violence happens in the Black community, let's say a police officer kills somebody, they say, where will Black Lives Matter when it comes to Blacks on Blacks violence, which is not a real thing, right? Every community has violence. One of the things I noticed about that is Black people have been fighting against violence in our community forever. We've been trying to get the guns out. We've been trying to get the liquor stores out. We've been doing this work forever. But because our voices are not heard, that's not the narrative that comes out. And so
Yeah.
there's Susan Bullets that does stuff in our community, and she's been doing it for many years. That's been working against violence in our communities. And so my biggest thing is making sure that I'm amplifying the voices in the community. That I'm saying, you know what, this is Pastor Davidson's message. This is why he's a celebrity in our community. This is why he's a hero. Have you read the West Side Gazette? And this is the perspective that the West Side Gazette is putting out, and this is the narrative that they're putting out, and this is what I agree with. And so until we start amplifying our voices, we're going to be talking about what are they saying about us. A lot of celebrities, I mean, they're making money a lot of times to put out these messages. And so it's not always going to serve us as a community. Just because they look like us doesn't mean that message is serving us in our community. But I definitely have been finding some of the most amazing people
Yeah.
in our community, and those are the messages that I'm listening to, and those are the voices that I'm amplifying.
Yeah.
But it's really problematic, and it's always happened. The corporations find that they can share these messages through faces that look like us. They've always done it. I mean, they started with these minstrel shows, and they put on blackface and commit crimes and pretend to be Black people, and then they started hiring Black people to do that. And so when you look at hip hop has some of those same traits as the minstrel shows. And I just I just looked at it as like, wow, why aren't we doing more to amplify the positive voices? And there's so many people in our community that make positive music, that have a positive message. We've had newspapers that have gone through hell and back to get out a message uplifting Black people. But what are we doing to promote that message? So instead of me saying anything negative about the message that Candace Owens or somebody would put out, I'm going to put out a positive message. I'm going to put out Pastor Davidson's message. That's enough for me to counteract what they're putting out. And I just hope and pray people share those messages, those positive messages that we keep putting out there, because man, we all have been fighting in our community for years. We all have been doing it. And I feel like coming up, it's my job to put it out. You guys are doing the work. So it's up to me to say something about it. It's up to me to support you. And that's what I'm working on with our youth, making sure that as you guys work, we got your back.
Yeah. Jeffrey, you are an award-winning journalist. I was at an event where you received several awards. So from that perspective, it's not always the positive light that you write about, and it takes the darkness to see the light. How do you find that balance to keep people week after week wanting to read and hear your message?
I think people they like the truth. They like things that they can relate to. I mean, if you provide people with the truth, I think that in relatability, everybody that we tend to write about or any situation, there's probably someone that they know, or they may even themselves be going through something similar, or they just find it to be an interesting story. So there's so many types of articles that I've written and I do write about, whether they're feature stories, whether it's investigative journalism, whether it's a key issue going on in the community that is important to them. I never will forget, I was at a gathering, a breakfast, and two guys, older guys, African American guys, were arguing with each other about a major issue that was happening in the community. And one guy stopped and said, "You know what? Hey, look, I don't argue with you no more. I'm just gonna wait till Thursday." He said, "Well, what's happening?" He said, "That's when I'm getting forward time. I'll be able to find out exactly what's going on." That made me feel good because they knew that we were going to be able to provide them with the true story, the true issue. We're not going to sugarcoat it. We're going to tell them the truth. And I think that's what they want. As far as the balancing act is concerned, I think for me, it's a little difficult at times. I've read so many stories, heartbreaking stories. And sometimes I have to really, detox and step away and find stuff else to really focus my mind on, because that story had to be told. And there's so many stories that I've written that actually gone to the Supreme Court. The issue actually was appeared on AO, Vice, or it's gone to the next level of coming to some resolution. One of the stories I wrote about relative to a young man that was killed by Houston Police Department here. The mother just recently settled with the city of Houston. The officer, Juventino Castro, didn't get indicted, but her son was killed riding a bike to the store. He was mistaken for a criminal because he had on a hoodie riding a bike in the nighttime. But her mom just got a settlement from the city in over $1 million. And so I broke that story through the Forward Times. And so those stories, as well as stories that I've written as a newswire contributor for the National Newspaper Publishers Association, is to shed light on what's impacting Black people. And there's so many things that are impacting black people. They talk about there's a major pandemic going on in COVID-19, to which I'm a survivor. But there's a pandemic that's been impacting Black people since the inception of this country, and it's called racism. And so we have to talk about all those things that are impacting Black people. And that's why the press and our pens and our voices are so
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you hear Bobby?
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, it looks like Jeff stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he froze. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's back. There he goes.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you
You
now.
froze for a
Okay,
second.
I don't know what part of what I said you missed.
I don't know. It must be a Texas thing. You guys get stuff late out there all the way anyhow. So maybe you were saying some good stuff, Jeff, and all of a sudden we lost you. You were saying some great stuff. You were talking about the stories you had written, and one of them was really a tearjerker and a heartbreaker. You had to back up and regroup and catch yourself. But what we got from what you were saying is that people want to hear the truth.
Well, what I guess to tie it up with a nice bow is the fact that the information that we put out is very, very important to the Black community. I said there's two pandemics that are impacting Black people right now: COVID-19, to which I'm a survivor of COVID-19, and also racism since the foundation of this country. And we have to continue to write and tell stories that are important to Black people, not just the tear jerkers, not just the horror stories, not just the negative stories, but we also need to hear the positive stories. We need to hear stories about brothers like Ramon Robinson and Marcus Davidson and others in the community, Bobby Henry and Perry Busby, vote STFB shirts. Those are stories that we need to highlight because Black people are already dealing with trauma and trauma since the inception of this country. So it's important to tell those stories and tell them often.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
He got stuck again. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Houston Forward Times is a historic newspaper in Houston. The original publisher, Dog Carter and her husband, uh, the same like the West Side Gazette. We are rooted in the community. So therefore, Mr. Boney, and everybody on this panel has contributed to the life of a black newspaper because they believe in it. Just as you said, we need to tell our own stories, which brings us to a point now. This this whole political process has left us kind of torn between really who do we listen to? We listen to some of the politicians and put them in office, and now they are reneging on the deal. You know, so now we are being tested. So Pastor, how do we get it? How do we deal with that? How do we deal with those who we have put in office? You know, and have led us or beginning to lead us down a rabbit hole.
How do we deal with them?
Yeah, how do we go back and regain? Mm-hmm,
I think we it starts with whomever we put in office. I think we need to have constant contact with them, holding them accountable. But I think we have to be as adamant as we are of casting our vote to get people in. We have to be that adamant of getting them out if they're not going to hold their position. I mean, I know they're going to make some promises that they won't keep, but for the most part, but you can't get in and then dupe us and hustle us and take us down the wrong pathway. That just and again, how do we do that? With people like you with the West Side Gazette that speaks to our community, giving us insight. People like Brother Boney who writes to our community because guess what? Those are voices we can trust. So when y'all start telling us about, hey, you go to that politician and say, hey, we really think you need to be going in a different direction. When they won't listen, well, they should have listened because by the time they decide to listen, we should be reading.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you have
So
go Perry.
yeah. So I mean, Jeff, you get a chance to see it on both sides. One as one who's reporting and one who can be reported on. Um, so how should a community gauge a politician? Now, I can say this about you because even here in Florida, I see you provide updates about what you're doing and recognizing your constituents. How then do you best gauge a leader or your political leader if you don't see him?
Mm,
That's a great question. Sadly, politics has become more like a popularity contest.
mm,
And so it's really the people that you see or that you probably know by name versus the actual works that they do. I see it often here in my area where people haven't done anything in the community, but because they have strong name ID, and they probably have seen him on the cameras or they have voted for him before, they'll just vote for him again. And when you have a high turnout election like we have now because of number 45 being on the ballot again, that's driving so many more new voters or people that have been registered voters that had never voted before or hadn't voted in a while to the polls. And when they come to the polls, I think where it impacts many of us the most is that most black people, it's no secret, overwhelmingly vote for Democratic candidates in nearly every national election. And those are pretty much identical results that show in local and state elections. Even if elections where you got a race that is considered to be nonpartisan, such as for mayor or city council seat, like in my city, black people have historically voted for the candidates that have self-identified or campaigned as a Democrat. So when it comes to my streets being fixed or my sidewalks being fixed or my trash being picked up. That's not a Democratic or a Republican issue. I want somebody to pick up my trash. I want somebody to fix my streets. I want to be safe and protected by the police. So on the surface, African Americans are marketed to as if our sacred vote means so much, but historically, that often changes once we cast our vote. So it's an interesting phenomenon to watch as we see Black people sought after. You got the platinum plan that Trump talking about. You got Biden got a plan for Black folks. What's his name that ran before? He had a plan. Bloomberg had a plan for Black people. Everybody got a plan for Black folks.
Except Black people.
Except Black people.
Yes.
And that's really the key. Where's our agenda, our collective agenda? That's where we're lacking sorely. And I think that it's easy to be manipulated and to end up voting for folks that you don't know, that don't probably have your best interest at heart, because you ain't paying attention to politics as a whole, and you don't have an agenda. You don't know what to ask for. I guarantee you, and I'll shut up with this. If President Obama, when he was in office, would have landed Air Force One in the middle of one of our Black neighborhoods all across the city, all across the country, and he got off of that plane or that helicopter and asked, okay, Black folks in this community, what do y'all want? What can I do for you? They wouldn't have a clue what they're asking for, other than maybe some money, a photo op, something like that. So I think that if we don't have a true agenda, collective agenda, that we all that the majority of us can agree upon, because everybody ain't gonna get 100% of support on anything. But if you can get collective support on something that matters to Black people, all of us are Black, can find something or some things that we can agree upon that we can benefit our overall culture. The Hispanics are focused on immigration reform. The LGBT community is focused on same-sex rights and things of that nature. So they can come together, whether they agree with each other or not, whether they're Democrat or Republican, to say, this is important to us as a people, as a group. What about Black people? Why can't we do the same thing? That's what I'm hoping for.
Right.
I was going to say, I think, I know from just the crowd I'm around, I think a lot of what we need and what I'm working on is just organizing people, right? And so organizing people and giving them the information and letting them know who our leadership is, who's in a position of leadership in our community. And I think we've been misguided. I know, speaking for a younger generation, we've been misguided really bad. And one of the things I think that we could benefit from is just that organization, whether on social media. There's all these racist like groups popping up and everything everywhere. One of the things that they are is organized. And I think that organization would serve us greatly. But we need somebody who's going to take the reins and say, look, I'm working on organizing us. What do you think, Mr. Henry? What do you think, Mr. Busby? What do you think, Pastor? What do you think, Mr. Boney? And get you guys ideas. You've been in the community. You've been doing the work. And like I said before, a lot of this is on people like myself, because you guys are working. You can't do both, right? You're doing a lot already. And so we have to speak up, and we have to let you guys know we have your back, but we also have to get organized. And the reason why I think we're in the position is because we're not organized and talking to each other. Hey, what do you want? What are you guys going through over there? What is it that your community needs? Because it may be different than my community. It may look a little bit different. And so just that communication and making sure that we're connected. That way, even when a message is being put out about us, we can connect with each other and say, hey, look, this is the message we're going to put out together, and we're going to use our social media. I'm going to post it on Twitter. I need you guys to retweet this. I need your support on this. That type of organization, we see it through the Trump campaign, where they'll create fake Black voter accounts, and they'll be organized with that, and it looks like Black people are supporting Trump, and it's just a bunch of fake accounts, but they've organized it in a way to where it's working. It's working to its benefit, and I think we really need to do a lot more when it comes to organization.
Yeah, it's like I'm the oldest person in this gathering right here. I'm the oldest person now, so I remember the times where and I don't like to say that. What kept us moving forward was the fact that we had a location where we could meet and discuss. Everybody could, everybody could, and it was based upon what the single message we were given, on a Sunday. Those y'all say what you want to say, but on that Sunday morning when we were in church, we got the message, and that was a message of respect. That was a message of reverence. That was the spiritual message that we got. Now we have been influenced where that spiritual message has, man, I ain't listening to no white religion. That's a white man religion. That, I'm not. So our message has been watered down by a source that we don't even address. We don't do it, So our message, the message has been watered down. That black coffee has become full of cream. And the young folk who wants that strong black coffee, don't get a chance to have it served to them because the cafeteria closed. Y'all understand what I'm trying to say? We don't have that communal point where we can come in and have these conversations. You, Mr. Homeless man and woman, come on in and let's talk. You, drug addict, you, alcoholic, come on here and let's have this conversation. You are just as important as everybody else. But the message that we're getting is, oh, you're not that kind of Negro. You're not like them. You don't have to do what they're doing. And we continue to foster that message when we don't address it and say, no, I almost said it. You wrong. Am I making my
point? No, definitely. I think some of that too is the division that's been created in our community, and sometimes we don't realize that. Even the Michael Jordan LeBron debate, right? I went on ESPN because I reached out to one of my friends and I said, I want you to look at this, and I took a screenshot, and ESPN was making both sides of the argument, and I said, look at this, people are just copying and pasting this to Facebook, but it has us arguing about us, and so one side dislikes LeBron, one side dislikes Michael Jordan, but it's this constant and continuous division that we're not seeing. We're not seeing this, right? And so we have one side where some of the young men, and I was included in this, look at the pastor a certain way, and so there's that division there, and so we don't go to church, or we don't at least ask for that knowledge, or have that same respect for the church as we should. We don't have that same respect for our brothers that we should. We're not reading the West Side Gazette. We're looking on other platforms for this information because we've been so divided, and we don't realize that we're dividing ourselves because we're so used to it. And so that's what I'm up against. From what I'm trying to do is make sure that we see from every angle that there's division there. Every conversation about blacks that are doing something amazing, we don't talk about them doing something amazing. We talk about the competition and are they the greatest? We question them every time we can. And I think we need to stop looking at each other that way. And another thing is creating our own celebrities, our own awards, because when someone wins this award, it kind of legitimizes them. So if an artist wins a Grammy, we look at them as, wow, that's the epitome of success. And that's not our award. That's not something we created. That's not something that celebrates our music. And so it's in some ways it's just not for us. And they're going to celebrate the worst of us to make the best of us think that that's what the rest of us should be doing. And so I think a lot of that division is just not seen. And I mean, you can go on some websites and they'll make both sides of the debate for us so that we are arguing. So I'm not looking at Brother Boney and I'm saying, wow, man, that was an amazing article. I appreciate that information that you put out. We'll say, wow, he got an award, but is he better than Mr. Henry? That has nothing to do with anything. That's not up for discussion. That's not a conversation. Yeah. Celebrate them. Just celebrate these brothers. And we haven't been doing that. And we've been arguing about who's the greatest from football, basketball, boxing, and at every turn we are tearing each other down. We are just not celebrating the greatness and not realizing that so many of us are great that's why we even have the debate. There are so many incredible people of color that we're going to continue this debate if we don't realize that it will eventually tear us apart. And so even in the community on the smallest scale, you're going to see people going at each other's heads saying, well, is he better than this person? With kids in high school and we just, it's just this constant cycle, and we got to realize it. And you know what? If there's two brothers that are doing an amazing job, lift them both up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Good.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, and there's been some great points here. But then again, none of this is new. Um, I'm not as old as Bobby,
Well.
but but I
Keep
remember
waking
a
up.
time I remember at a time growing up when in our community, if you came out of jail, getting you to go to church was one of the hardest things to do because you knew church folk didn't really look kindly on you or whatever thing. And and it was there. It was some churches that you couldn't go to. Uh, I remember when the Black Panther Party was frowned upon in the Christian community. I remember when Malcolm X wasn't looked kindly upon by Baptist preachers. I grew up at that time. So we've always had that friction, but through time it's happened. But now look at us. We Even if you did come back and you couldn't get in the church and maybe you went to the mosque, you were still in the hood. You were still in the community. But now our communities are so spread apart. So how do we help bring community back when people are so spread apart?
You, okay, I listen. The message, the messenger, the stories. The stories are our binding glue that holds us together. What we have allowed to happen is for people who have created the glue for us to use. It doesn't have the adhesive for bringing us together. It doesn't. It is strictly planned to keep us apart. It's we don't that glue that they're trying to glue us together with. It's like you a milk toast Negro. It's not there. It doesn't have no backbone. You know. So again, it's who you listening to. What message are you listening to? If we all agree to tell 20 other brothers for the next week or so or whatever we're gonna do, we're gonna lift up each other. We're gonna say something, we're gonna do some positive stuff, not use the negative influence, not to use the same capitalist thinking to describe who we are. That's their binding umbilical cord that they use to connect and disconnect is the capital, the money. It's that. Anyway, don't get me. Y'all, come on, help me out now.
No.
Bonnie?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Well, go ahead, Ramon. I'm sorry.
No, sir. After you.
I was just gonna say, first of all, let me just preface what I'm gonna say by saying that voting matters. Voting is important. Everybody needs to exercise their right to vote. That's extremely important. But my good frat brother, Carter G. Woodson, who wrote The
Miseducation of a Negro
in 1933, said this in one of the chapters. He said, quote, "It is unfortunate too that such a large number of Negroes do not know any better than to stake their whole fortune on politics. History does not show that any race, especially a minority group, has ever solved an important problem by relying altogether on one thing, certainly not by parking its political strength on one side of the fence because of empty promises. There are Negroes who know better, but such thinkers are kept in the background by the traducers of the race to prevent the enlightenment of the masses. The misleading politicians are the only persons through whom the traducers act with respect to the Negro, and there are always a sufficient number of mentally undeveloped voters who will supply them with a large following." I'm saying all that to say that it goes back to what I'm gonna always advocate for and preach. We have to have a collective agenda. We have to have a plan of action. When the Montgomery bus boycott went into place, that wasn't the first bus boycott. There was one in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. that they learned from. Dr. King went and visited with that pastor in Baton Rouge who actually orchestrated that and took that as a copy paste example to execute it in Montgomery for the sake of change. But before they did that, it was a small remnant of people, including Rosa Parks, including the pastor of that Methodist church, the AME church, including the local women and men in the community. It was about 14 to 15 people that met in that church that planned a bus boycott that lasted over a whole year and brought about change in that city. We have to be committed as even if it's a small group of us, a remnant of us. We can't be waiting on everybody. I can't wait on Superman. Superman ain't coming. He ain't coming to save the day for us or me. So I have to realize that I have been given a voice. I've been given a platform. I've been given the power to do something great, to do something like was just talked about, that, we need to celebrate those that are doing great work. There are people that are organizing in our communities. Are we supporting those groups or those organizers that are doing a great job of putting people together? Or are we talking about all of the negative about that person individually or their efforts? Instead of criticizing their efforts, we need to join in to support their efforts. And if we are not going to support them, then if we got the answers, we need to step up and do it. But we can't continue to vilify our own people and throw the baby out with the bathwater because we have personal agendas, because we have selfish agendas, because we don't like each other. We got pettiness that we operate by, jealousy, envy, and things of that nature. If we get past all of that and realize we have so much more in common that we don't have in common, then I think that we can move the needle on this issue relative to Black people and realize we need to fight this elephant in chunks and not as a whole. We need to start functioning on health issues, on criminal activity, or the criminal justice system, on homelessness, on affordable housing. There's so much that on the wealth gap, so much that impacts us. But what are we going to do to support those that are addressing those issues so we can collectively come together to bring it all together like a big goulash?
Okay. Dr. Davidson, I saw you shaking your head. What's happening?
I'm just listening. I'm listening. I'm totally in agreement with what he's saying. I think we have to, at some point, we've got to come together. I mean, when I hear everything that we're saying, the one thing that I believe is we've got to have some type of collaborative visioning approach, and I think that's what we're missing. We just don't have a collaborative approach. It seems like, because when you hear Black Agenda, if you were to ask all five of us, will all five of you give five different perspectives? We may hit one or two things together, but there's no collective agenda. And I think that's what we struggle from, because if you were to leave and say, hey, what's the Black agenda? 90% of Black America couldn't tell you what are the, say, five things we all agree. Hey, we got to have this, this, this. We got a bunch of stuff we're saying, but nobody's saying any of this exact same thing. We ought to all be able to say, well, the five things we want, X, Y, Z, and we can just say it and keep moving it wherever we are. But, and I don't know if we'll ever get there. And I think Brother Boney said this: if we don't all agree, what can we mostly agree upon? What can we mostly agree upon?
Right. And that's a good point. One thing about the Montgomery bus boycott, they all agreed on one thing: they wasn't gonna ride that bus.
Right.
So
and look at the results.
Yeah.
And look at the results.
Yes. So if we agreed on one thing that we agreed on, and out of all the five that we may throw out there, we got one thing in common. If we agree on that and move forward. And I was reading the Word today, and it was a gentleman. When a question was asked, a newspaper wrote this: "What's wrong with the world?" That question was asked. They got several answers, but one gentleman said that he said, "Dear sirs, it is I." So the onus comes back to us. So if we could, when we admit that we haven't done all that we should have did, And if we could agree that we ain't gonna ride that bus,
Yeah.
then we got ourselves an agenda. We got ourselves something to work with. But again, who do you listen to? We are defined by others. We allow others to tell us who we are. So the question is, who do you listen to?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can say that the churches that allow the West Side Gazette newspaper to come into the church, that supports the West Side Gazette, people ask me, say, man, you give your papers away. No, I don't. The church actually pays for those papers. So they believe in it. They believe in it. So if we can do that for each other to believe, you know, we're not going out, robbing nobody. Dr. Davidson, you're not robbing anybody. Ramon, you're not doing that. Jeffrey, you're not doing that. You know, I mean, we're not hurting. We're building up. Right?
Yeah.
Right. And we know those who are not doing that.
Hmm.
So what's wrong with calling them out? I didn't say disrespect them.
I think it's the way in which we call them out, and
Mm-hmm.
some people are it's better to give them an example, right? And we learn from example from, the moment we're born, we learn from example. And I think a lot of the examples, a lot of brothers have been learning from, myself included, sometimes uh, they don't have our best interests at heart. And I think when we approach them a certain way, if you approach somebody and you're very aggressive, a lot of times they turn off. They're not going to listen to anything that you say, right? We have to approach them, so that they open up and they're willing to learn and they're willing to take in that information and be influenced. And so I think it's the approach is everything when we're trying to get people, um, kind of to follow our lead or at least hear us out.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So do you think in terms, and Jeff, I hear you, and everyone is saying the same thing, but essentially it's about changing the mindset. And Jeff, to use your approach, um, by asking for the agenda, really what you are doing is inviting them to your table. And I think that again is just a shift in the paradigm. Uh, you know, it everyone goes to the Kentucky Derby, but the people who own horses are there for a different reason. And so I think when we kind of look at our politics and who we support, we kind of think about it as betting on the horse when really we should be owning horses. As you're saying, Jeff, that's what the agenda does. It brings the owner to us. And so how do we begin to do that? I mean, I think there's no it's not by happenstance that if you listen to Southern Baptist churches, you'll get the same political message that you get from most politicians. So how do we help use the paper to help drive the message, to help drive that? Because I think, again, the agenda starts with us being on one agenda and on one accord.
I think we need to stop making excuses. We need to
Yeah.
stop making excuses for ourselves. Now let's be clear. I am not going to excuse how African American or Black folks, people of African descent, was treated in this country. So
Hmm.
we didn't get here by ourselves. That's for sure. But
Hmm.
we do have collective power in a lot of ways. We have, over $1 trillion of buying power in our own possession on an annual basis. 1.3, I want to say trillion, to be honest.
No,
Is
more than that, Jeffrey. It's
is
going
more
up.
than that. And then we need to. We already got the tools in place. We got the people, the organizations. We got the entities. We got the tool. I mean, I think about this. I think about the fact that our ancestors, my great grandfather, bought acres and acres of land and knew enough to get the mineral rights under that land, and he didn't have even a second grade education. As a former slave, and that passed down, and I continue to benefit from his investment back in the early 1900s. And so this was during slavery. This was during, so if he, without the internet, without a library, without these fancy books and education and PhDs and master's degrees, was able to do those things and to benefit his family and to acquire land and to grow in a tumultuous situation, then we don't have any excuses. I believe that the beneficiaries of the civil rights struggle failed us, failed the generations after them. And now we have young people, a younger generation, that's saying enough is enough. We can't continue to do things the same way. Just like Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. We got the tools, we got the situation. There's so many plans and things that are out there. My question is, what are we going to buy into? What are we going to embrace? What are we going to move forward? We need to stop making excuses about why it ain't happening. And we need to quit looking for Superman. We got to save ourselves. The Black Panther Party had a 10-point plan. Did we embrace that? The current, there's a plan that was put out by the Nation of Islam. There's so many plans and things that have been introduced to Black people. What are we willing to listen to and embrace? Forget listening to it. What are we willing to listen to and embrace and to accept and to co-sign on? That's what my frustration is, because we got what it takes to succeed. And we see that as we're advancing politically, as we're advancing, just like with Reconstruction, Black people were senators and governors, and the Ku Klux Klan rose their ugly head up to try to intimidate Black people by kidnapping them and lynching them and things of that nature, because they saw the power that we was possessing in that arena. So we have to realize that they are already intimidated by us, because they know we're on the move and we ain't going nowhere. But the question is, what are we going to do to collectively come together and embrace some of the stuff that's already before us? I'm tired of the excuses, man. I ain't.
Okay. And let me, we got a question here. And Mr. Boney, do you know this person? Sherwin
Wills
Boney? Yeah.
Like
she says Ice Cube
could
got
be
a
familiar.
plan. He got a plan. Kanye, she laugh out loud. What's our agenda? Who do you listen to? Should the church be leading? She asked. Pastor Davidson, is coming at you now.
You know what? I think that last question, should the church be leading? I want to address that one first, and then I'll go to the one she previously asked. I think when we look historically, the Black church has always led. I think the Black church has always led, but what we've seen as of late, we've seen white evangelicals leading the charge, and we see what's happening with white evangelicals leading the charge. They're leading a charge, but they're leading a charge that is not in any way equitable for us, not in any way concerned about us. So if that's the case, the Black church has been quiet too long. And I think we've gotten caught up in everything else but what we should be caught up in, and that is still affecting change for society. Now, I do not dismiss what we should be doing theologically and doctrinally. I think we have to consider that. But I think a part of understanding, embracing our theology and our doctrine is we have to embrace the reality that Jesus was known for liberating people. Our God was a liberating God. So if that is the case, the church has become more vocal. The church has become more visible. The church has to make itself even more valuable. That's why I can speak to our context. We push voting. We push, political forums to have conversations, push this information. All of that is of vital importance to us. So I think that is why the church should be leading. But guess what? The church has to get a collective agenda. If that's going to be the case, all of these denominations, we've got to come together collectively as multiple denominations have to come together. Denomination leaders have to come together. They should sit down and establish a plan, go back to all of their constituent organizations and say, this is what we have done. This is what, the AME, the Baptists, the Kojic, we've all come together. And these are the 5 things that we as a religious body believe. These are the things that are important to African Americans. To our convention, as a convention, as a denomination, these are the things that we believe are important. Every church will say our convention, our or denomination has said these are the 5 things that are important to us. Imagine that being disseminated through every congregational body. Well, now we have a collective plan that's in multiple denominational bodies in thousands of churches across the nation. And then from that, the pastor say, go to your barbershop, go to the salon, go to the club, go to the web, and tell the people this is what we are doing collectively as a church. That's what I think has to happen. Now, when you start talking about Diddy has a plan, uh, uh, Ice Cube, 50 Cent, you know what? All of them have a plan, but does that plan have us in mind?
There you
And
go.
and guess what? As the church starts to pull together this plan, the church has to open itself up to those who are in the secular society, say to the entertainers, to the athletes, some kind of way. We got to reach out. So when the church starts to put this plan out and disseminate that, if you will, it's the same plan that athletes, celebrities, all of them are disseminating. There may be some variations, but for the most part, for example, economic empowerment. That's one, hypothetically. Um, closing the wealth gap and economic empowerment. That's one. Then health
Health.
disparities. That's 2. Voting. That's 3. We start just looking at that. I mean, educational opportunities. That's 4. Just simple stuff like that. There may be some variations of how we get to that end point, but we know these are the things that we're looking to do. And that's why I believe the church has a responsibility to lead. And, one side of you can say, hey, it's nice that celebrities are having a plan, but then we on the other side, we hear a ton of celebrities don't even vote. It's just hard for me to get too serious about them telling me what we need to be doing when they may or may not. And then on the flip side, talk about what the church is not doing. Well, celebrities, what are you doing? I mean, how many clubs have you seen open during the pandemic to give out free food, to give out clothes, to do any? But how many churches have you seen standing on the street giving out free food, putting food in trunks, putting clothes in cars? So I'm like, let's decide how we can all work together. You need the church, you need the club owners, you need athletes, you need celebrities. We all need each other until we can all hook up and get together. I think we'll always be challenged to reach our ultimate end goal, if you will, as using as an analogy of figuring out how do we not get on that bus. That's the one thing we got to all agree to not get on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Can I chime in on something?
Mm-hmm. You think we gonna stop you?
No, I just want to say this because I respect the heck out of Pastor Davidson and his comments right now, and I in no way want to be disparaging of the black church, but the black church has dropped the bomb, dropped the ball collectively as well. Because if
Yep.
you look at history, going back to the 1700s, I'm talking about Richard Allen paved the way. He was the founder of the AME Church,
Yep.
and he was not only a minister, an educator, but and a writer. He was also a writer, but he was an influential black leader that fought against slavery. And he and his wife, I don't want to exclude his wife as well. The first lady was also with him fighting against slavery and whatever in the midst of being discriminated against by the Methodist Church. But I say all that to say, you fast forward throughout history, since that time up until now, you see that the black church, even especially during the civil rights movement, was very instrumental in bringing about change. But you look at our communities right now, the entities with the greatest assets and the greatest influence is the black church. They own the most expensive real estate in most of our communities. They generate the most revenue on a weekly basis in our communities, and they have access to the most people on a collective basis out of any entity in the black community on a week-to-week basis. So if they're not speaking up, if they're not speaking out, if they're not using their resources and their assets to empower the black
Right.
community, not just get their tithes and their offerings or collect their building fund or they pass the anniversary.
Hey, wait.
Hold on. I ain't trying to knock the money, Pastor. Look, I ain't trying to knock the money, Pastor.
No,
Hold
I'm
on.
with you, bro.
I
I'm
ain't
with
trying to
you.
knock the money, Pastor. Hey,
I'm
look,
with
I
you.
want to collect the offering after this sermon as well. But listen, all I'm saying is we need not make excuses
Right.
us as a people, and we can't make excuses for the black church. They have too much power, too much influence, too much access to the people to get a message out and to bring us together. And I think they are the catalyst. They are the foundation. They are the glue to make us better and stronger as they always have been since the foundation of this country.
But
You
the
know,
challenge, can I say, but the challenge
yes,
that is to hear a guy like Brother Boney say that. I totally agree. But my challenge is we have too many pastors who say, "Man, I don't mess no politics." How in the heck can you not mess with politics? It directly affects what you just said. The
yeah,
people in your community. You don't get in politics, they don't get a job. They don't bring a tithe and offering. You don't have that high price real estate. You don't become that thriving. So I think the church, and we have the most captive time every week. If you do not weave social justice, and every week I've been saying, gotta vote, gotta vote. Come on, what can we do? If we don't do that, we need to shut the doors. When I tell you, man, every word you've said, and I think it's a shame, it's a shame, it's a shame before God that we have become the sleeping giant of our community. Like I said, every week, all these people we have, I don't care if you have 55,000, you got the people in the community, I I can get more done of saying to our church, you know what, this is a good politician that we should really pray for. That right there is a sign we need to vote for them. I don't even need the politician to come because they trust the voice of their leader. And for you to any leader sit there and say, "Man, I don't talk about that. I just preach the word of God." Miss me with that, Negro, because I'm saying you are a part
Yes,
of the
Lord.
problem that's causing us to be in the midst that we're in. And I said this, and Bobby knows this.
yeah,
Man, they can put me out. The day they tell me I can't stand for my people and speak of truth to power and share with them, we have issues. And I say that to the white pastors. You can't be with me if you can't stand in your pulpit and tell your people white supremacy is a sin. Police brutality, that's sinful. If you can't, we don't need to pray behind closed doors. Hey, brother, let's pray together. Man, step out front and say, "Hey, let's check out what the police doing to the black folk." Say that. And a black pastor who will say, "I don't want to deal with that." Man, listen, if I could put a karate chokehold on my
Preach, preacher.
that's the truth though.
Right.
We gotta stop. And as Boney said, at what point do we take that powerful voice that the community knows? Hey, if the church speaks, we ought to listen. But they know what? You know what? We're gonna give Reb them some free turkeys. They ain't gonna say no. Well, I don't want to mess that. You know, the mayor gave us some free turkey. Man, they don't give me 1,000,000 free turkeys. If you do something wrong with these black folk, you can keep your turkeys. I don't care. I'm just saying that's how we have to be that passionate.
and that, and and there within is not lies the entire problem, but that's it. One of the strongest sermons I ever heard was the 7 last words, where each different pastors came in. So it was a different. It wasn't one pastor. It wasn't one church, because we are the church. It was different ones with one thing, one message, and they said it. And until our Lord have mercy, until our black preachers understand that they are what's the term, preaching revolution. What God dog it.
Revolution.
People who preach freedom, preachers who preach freedom, if they're not preaching freedom, and I'm not talking about that white angelical stuff. I'm talking about, like you said, Pastor, that for us, then they're not doing it. We don't owe our listening ear to that type of message, because it's not a message of freedom.
Bobby, can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
You can't preach freedom if you're not free. If you're in the politician's pocket, you can't be talking about the politician's issues. So
who you listening to? Come on,
you can't. That's what I'm saying. So if I'm gonna be free, I gotta be free. You can't preach a message of freedom when they got you in bondage.
Hello.
When you know well, I ain't gonna talk about that. No, you can't talk about that because he gave you some money for something. You're like, man, I don't want your money. If I want to support you, I'm gonna support you because I believe in what you're doing. I don't need no reason. Don't give me no favors because if you get wrong, I need to be able to speak about that wrong and I feel like, hey, Rev, I can take that money from you. Well, you can't take nothing from you. If you didn't give me anything, you can't take nothing. And I'll be honest with you, brothers. We have a lot of people who are in that situation and they can't
Yes,
speak
they are.
because they're in bondage. If you're not free, you can't speak. And man,
Right.
Again, I have worked hard not to be in any politician's pocket in Broward in the state of Florida. So if you come around, I can be cordial and nice to you, but I don't have to be chummy with you. If I think if you getting out of bounds, I can throw the flag and I don't have to feel bad that I can throw the flag because you can't come back and say, well, I ain't take nothing from him. So, and I think we need more of that so that can be when the black church speaks up and it speaks out, and we don't have to worry about what they're going to take from us, what they're going to do to us. That's all I got, man. When you start talking about that, yeah, hype, man.
I know.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, but it happens in all of our communities, and I think conversations like this have to be that laxative. I mean, because if we're saying that who you listening to, then if they listening bad, then what we're gonna get out is something bad. Garbage in is garbage out.
Mhm,
If I can just use a programming term, whatever I'm gonna put in, I can't
mhm,
trust those results. So we have got to. It's in our best interest. Uh, I know you can preach good, Pastor, especially when everybody in the church is doing well. It's hard preaching. It's hard preaching with a church full of people who aren't in good spirits.
mhm.
Mhm.
It's hard. It's hard. It's hard leading Jeff. It's hard leading people if they community in disrepair and they don't see it. I don't care how hopeful you talk.
Yeah.
So we've got to change this. It's in our best interest. We've got to look to all forms. Ramon and what he does. He helped me in trying to do some messaging, and
Mhm.
so we've got to learn not just how to listen. We've got to learn how to communicate and talk to people in a language they can understand.
Mhm.
Because if they don't understand us, we can talk all the proverbs and give all the prophecy we want to. A prophecy don't help if I can't listen to it and I don't understand it.
Hmm.
Mm.
So
But
we want to liberate our people. Our people got to understand the liberation message. So
That's it.
I
That's
appreciate
it.
this.
Here, that was it. The liberation. Preachers who
liberation,
preach liberation. That's
right?
what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
James
yeah.
Cone and them.
Right,
Anyway,
but
I'm sorry.
I
I got
see
excited.
something. I see something that's in the comment section by Miss Boney that makes a lot of sense. She says white evangelicals have formed packs, and they pump money into them. They move with one voice. Say what you want to, money will get you in some doors that you just can't. We have
Right.
to we see when we put money together. Can you imagine a black church having political ads on there paid for by
Mm-hmm.
Black Church America political? We can say what we want to say, but you can't say nothing when you don't pay any money. Because guess what? You can't. And then we get mad at Bobby ask us if $50 put an ad.
Mm-hmm.
Man,
Yeah. Come on.
you give,
Yeah. Tell the truth.
but they do that, and they'll put it under the rubric of some other name. They invest their money, and their voice and their agenda is being promoted all over the airways, being put in the ears, and they sending the message. But we won't even capitalize on Sunday morning. Before we get to that layer, we got to capitalize on Sunday morning.
Yeah. Yeah. Whoa. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I just for a little bit, I remember when our church, Pastor, this was way before you
Mhm.
came there. There was a group of people that tried to get our church and other black churches to put their monies in a black bank. And word got out, and it kind of like, kind of messed things up. Said these these Negroes here trying to go against the grain.
Really?
Yeah, yeah,
Man.
yeah, yeah. I know, but we got some work to do, y'all.
Hmm.
You know, Ramon, you doing yours. You doing yours. Bonnie, you doing yours. You know, Pastor, you doing yours. Perry, you doing yours. I'm doing mine.
Hmm.
But doggone it, that we gotta get folk off that bus.
Hmm.
You know, we got to get them off that bus. If not, we all gonna, you know, wind up someplace where we really don't want to be. So, anybody got any closing thoughts? I know we done went way over the time. I've certainly enjoyed it, but uh, let's well, you know, Pastor, you wanna give us your closing thought, and we'll go around the board and take us on home.
First of all, I want to say thank you for allowing me to be a part of this conversation. I think it's healthy for us to do this periodically, but I also think that we got to continue to work towards a collective plan. I think the Black church has work to do. I think Black men, Black women, our Black community, we have much work to do. But you can look at it from this perspective and see it as an obstacle, but I see it as an opportunity. Every day I wake up and say, hey, how can we seize this opportunity to be better as a collective group of people? What can we do to partner with one another and collaborate with one another to make the impact that we need to make, ultimately for the good of our community? I think that, yes, we need to pray, but we also need to participate. We have God is going to do his part, but we have a part to do. So we can't, say that we are absolved from our human responsibility because God is going to do what he does. We have work to do.
Mm-hmm. Ramon.
Yeah, now I mean I'm invigorated. I appreciate any time I get to spend with you brothers. I'm so grateful for the opportunity, brother Boney. It's a honor to meet you. I hope we can work together in the near future, and I'm going to do my part. And just telling the truth, as Brother Boney said earlier, that hit me because one of the things that I was doing, I was creating stories, and I realized, you know what, I could just tell the truth, tell the truth what's happening in the community, and I could talk about people who are really doing the work. And so that's what I'm dedicated to, and that's what I will be doing. And once again, I thank you guys, and I'm honored to be a part of the conversation.
Before you say something, Mr. Boney, Raymond, what's that shirt you got on, man?
Oh man, listen. If you guys don't see
What's
Mr.
what's
Henry
that shirt?
here with the West Side Gazette,
Hey
Can
man,
y'all can y'all
it's
see
on.
that shirt?
Hey man, it's supposed to be the other shirt. Hey, on the back of it, you should be able to turn around and say, "I love you." There's absolutely nothing you can do about it. You should have turned around and
Okay,
said, "What on the back?"
I'm coming. That's it. I'm coming at you.
so this is a part of telling the truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the West Side Gazette has been empowering people since 1971. That needs to be the message. That's the
Mhm.
message that we're gonna put out there on the streets. We're not gonna be supporting any of these other brands that don't support the community. We're gonna make sure that your message is heard, and that we celebrate your celebrity, and we don't put out messages that are hurting our people. And so that's what this is about. And there's gonna be plenty of it. And I just ask you guys, just keep doing what you're doing. I'm literally here to support you and praise you, brothers, as you guys continue to do the work you're doing.
Okay, Mr. Boney.
I just want to once again thank my good brother from Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, my
Yes,
frat
sir.
brother, and the
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I know that resonated in your spirit, Pastor, real deep and heavy. But root to the good bros. But I just want to thank all of the panelists. You guys were amazing, and definitely were honored. I was honored to be a part of it. I just want to close out with just a little bit of. I want to encourage everybody to vote. You get out and vote like your life depends on it, because it does. Your life and your future, and the future of your kids and your children's children depends on it. But I just want to kind of close with a little history, because we need to understand that Black people have always voted our interests, not so much a political party per se, but we've gone with parties that we believe had our best interests at heart. And if you look at history, you look at like between the Civil War and the early part of the 20th century, Black folks voted Republican. I mean, a lot of people don't really like to talk about that, but they voted heavily Republican. And one of those key factors was because, of course, the Emancipation Proclamation and President Abraham Lincoln. But after the passage of the Emancipation Proclamation, I talked about earlier how the Ku Klux Klan started attacking blacks, threatening them not to vote if they supported Republican candidates, ran as Republicans. And the Democratic Party at that time, interestingly enough, they didn't even solicit blacks to be a part of their party, primarily because the majority was white and they had these segregationist politicians who governed in these southern states. And so most of the blacks who lived in the South, they was prevented from voting. And it wasn't until 1924 that blacks were even permitted to even attend Democratic conventions in any capacity officially. So in 1948, Harry Truman got 77% of the black vote because black folks started to realize that they were attracting black people. They were reaching out to black people. They were talking about black issues. And in 1956, Eisenhower got 39% of the black vote. And 4 years later, Nixon got 32% of the vote. And then, of course, because of the Civil Rights Act of 64, Lyndon Johnson got the lion's share of the black vote. What am I trying to say? He got 94% of the black vote that year after the Civil Rights Act because it was a black issue. You fast forward, ever since that time, no Republican presidential candidate got more than 15% of the black vote. So what am I trying to say? The Democratic Party knows that the African-American community is loyal to them because of what they perceive to be their support of black issues in the past. But this is since the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act. What have black people, from an agenda standpoint, benefited from because of this loyalty, because of this committed loyalty? This last election with Obama, he got 96% of the vote in 2008. And it's 90% plus in 2012. And it continues, this loyal support. We got to demand more from the Democratic Party if we're going to be this loyal to them with our vote. And we got to demand more from everybody, but we got to demand who we give our votes to, we got to make a demand for. And nothing, I think it was Frederick Douglass says, power conceives nothing without a demand.
Right, absolutely. Okay, let me say this before I go to you, Perry. Let me do this. Okay, we got a listener out of Washington, D.C. By the name of Michael Bumpner. And he just happened to be a Kappa. And what he says is this. He said he enjoys the 2-minute warning, and he hoped you all are going to discuss the breaking news. And the breaking news was this: the FBI is involved in our elections. And that's what your Kappa brother said, who enjoys watching the program. So, Michael, tell your wife we said hello and we're praying for her. And the pastor is a Kappa. You were right on that.
Well, let me ask you this: if the FBI is involved, the question is, how are they involved? To help with
us? It's breaking news, so we didn't get a chance to get into it because we was engaged in this conversation.
But I mean, the FBI has been doing a lot of things for a long time, and 70% of the articles written about the Black Panthers were written by the FBI. A lot of people don't know about that and don't talk about that, and so they've been turning black people against black issues for a long time.
And how do you know that, Raymond? What's your personal connection to the Panthers?
Well, my aunt was in the Panthers, Sister Sheba.
Thank you.
But, that's just through doing research. Once I get to meet somebody, like I said, I look at you brothers as celebrities. I look at you that way because your fight has been hard. This road has not been paved in gold that you all have taken. And so when I look at you guys, I look at the work you've done. You can't sell me a celebrity based on glitter and gold. I just don't go for that. I look at the work you've done in my community to make things better for me. That's who I celebrate. And so in the research that I've done, I've learned a lot about, just our community and then what we've had to go through. And so that's something I've learned over the years, is just watching what the FBI has been doing, watching what the media has been doing, and how it's affected us as a community.
Good. And I was making reference so people would have an idea that you do know what you're talking about. It's not something that somebody told you is what you know. So that was my point.
No,
Okay,
I'm out
Perry.
here with you guys.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I know who I'm listening to you. I know who I listen to.
Right.
I'm telling you. Come on, Perry.
Now, man, first of all, Bobby, thank you as always for being the host and having the uh, just the audacity to try to think that this crazy idea I had could come to light. But this has been a full circle conversation for me. My first role in politics was when I was 6 years old, and the first African American city councilman. One of the first places he came was my father's church because his father-in-law was the deacon. Uh, so I've been around politics and in churches for all my life, and that's where I got involved. Uh, but in terms of who you listen to, one of the first, and it's all been around voting for me because very few people know that one of the things I thought about doing was running for the supervisor of election. And when I decided to do that, one of the first people I turned to was Jeff because I wanted to get in touch with Bobby. And it's just been about a journey because as soon as I started talking to Bobby and we started talking about voting and we started talking about our passion for what we wanted to see our people achieve in this election and the things that we needed to turn around, I quickly forgot about being a supervisor of election and got with my brother in this foxhole to start teaching our people about voting and really to touch on it in a different way that we don't talk about. And that was about through the technology, because our voting system is run through technology that we take for granted. And trying to teach that it became this crazy idea that we decided, well, you know what, let's just call an alarm. And really, it wasn't just about the voting process, but it's about how we embrace where we are to do what we need to do. Um, if the game requires that I have to have a white man to make it, then you know what? I'm crazy enough to say then I don't want to have a white man choose me. Let me choose my white man. If that's what the game requires. I'm not going to get out here on stage hoping that a white man picks me so I can make it in life. No, I'm going to make it in life, and if I happen to choose that white man, then here we go. And that's just, I get that from all you brothers. And this has to be contagious among our people. That we're not gonna move our community until we see we're gonna do it ourselves. Because you know what? History shows us when we did it ourselves, white folk came and tried to take it, and they did in most cases. Be it Rosewood, be it Tulsa, when we took care of our business, we was about it so much to the point that white America got jealous and took it from us. Well, can we learn that lesson? And can we learn not to keep having more Juneteenth celebrations in our life? And when I say that, I mean I'm from Beaumont, Texas, 45 miles east of Galveston, where the emancipation, where Juneteenth was announced. I don't want to keep having more Juneteenth like events where we keep learning stuff late. With the internet and everything else available, can we learn some good stuff on time? And that's what we have to be about. That, yeah, people are inundated, but we got to be as committed and as I don't want to say conniving, but if it helps, we got to be as conniving as the opposition in getting our word out. And with that, thanks.
Okay. All right. Pastor, thank you so very much. I know we're past your bedtime, and we certainly appreciate and honor that you respected us enough to do it. And thank you. Ramon, I hope we didn't hinder your intellectual ability to garner all of the necessary information you need. to put that whole history together. And Mr. Boney, Jeffrey L. Boney, and all of your journalistic skills, your award-winning talents, we are just elated that you decided you would grace, your presence with us, coming from Texas, and you came on time. You didn't come late. So for that, we say thank you. And in the words of my classmate from Orlando who just texted, she said, we do have work to do. But brothers, I do believe that if we sincerely believe that we should be on one accord, and that one accord is a spiritual connection, not something that we can see with our human eye, but from a spiritual aspect that we can actually believe it and be led by that, we can keep people off the bus. All we need is just one thing. It only takes one. The journey of 1,000,000 miles began with one step. They ate the elephant one bite at a time. Rome was not built in a day. And God built this world in 6 days, and he rested on the seventh. It's a step, it's a process, it's a journey. But if you got the right people on the journey with you, those who believe in what you're doing, and you're listening to them because they are tied to and listening to a higher being, we'll be all right. But the moment we allow ourselves to get involved, instead of becoming servant, we become self-serving, we have defeated the purpose. So brothers, I love you, Pastor, and there ain't nothing you can do about it. Keep preaching what you keep preaching, keep doing what you do. Ariel, thank you for your work behind the screen, for doing this. And next week, this is really, I wanted you to come on, Pastor, but we're going to use some choice words that might not be, I don't want anybody to ever associate you with some of the terms that we might use next week. You know what I mean?
Hey, I'm with the brothers, man.
That's right. You see that? And we got you back. You see Perry's shirt?
Ask them something.
Or shut the up. And that's what
we're gonna shut the foolery up. Shut the foolery up. That's
So people,
that works.
Y'all, and we're in it to win it. We ain't going nowhere, Bonnie. We ain't scared. We're not going anywhere. It's gonna take this. This is what got us here, and this is what gonna move us forward. Is the fact that we know where we come from. I'm reading the line. I missed it, Mr. Henry. Oh, the FBI is reporting that Iran and the Russian has taken specific actions to influence the elections. So there you have it.
But are they working? Are they working on the right side this year?
Okay. Mm-hmm. I tell you, man.
Hey, let's see what side before you stop them.
I think that's conflicting interest. That's conflicting interest there.
Hey, what your shirt say? That's what they saying. Let's see what they're working with this time. Do we need to hold?
Well,
yeah.
So,
all right.
Yeah, man.
Hey, thank you so much, man. I appreciate being a part.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Ramon. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Good night, brothers, and look forward to being a part of it another time. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right. Take care.
All right. Boney, we off.